What's going on, guys? Welcome to my first video as a graphic designer. Today in this video, I'm going to be showing you guys exactly how I made a design for a clothing brand called Human. Let's get started. So I start off here with a landscape image that I actually generated with the generative AI tool in combination with some real images of some landscapes. And then I kind of play with it a little bit. I continue to use the generative AI tool to, break up that landscape, put some flowing water. Now you can see I'm pen tooling out the landscape because I want to get rid of the sky. I want to replace it with my own sky. I'm getting rid of anything above the landscape line. And as you can see here, some of these trees got cut off, so I'm going back through to refine my selection and then remove them again. And then I use the spot healing brush tool, which is with J on the keyboard, to remove this tree. It gave me a little bit of trouble. I had to do it a couple times, but I got it down pat there. As you can see, now we have a clean landscape that we can use and shape to what kind of design we want moving forward. Then I go back through, I notice a couple imperfections, specifically that one on the corner there that I removed to make it look more perfect. Next I go in and I do a selection, which is the size of the design that I'm using, and I wanted to do a gradient, west, kind of, Midwest teal blue, clear sky. So I played with that a little bit, and I replaced eventually that coyote with a different coyote, one that is isolated more so that I can edit it to look more in place. That other one would have been hard to make a selection as refined enough to keep it look like it's actually in the environment. And as you can see here, I play with it for a little bit. In graphic design, there's a lot of tedious things where you go in and you keep editing a little bit until it looks perfect. Now I go through the water and I make kind of a rough selection so I could section out that water. As you're going to see in a little bit, I do a specific kind of design style where I threshold and I use filters to make things look the way I want them to look. So sectioning out anything that's going to be of different color is really important. So as you can see, I'm doing that, and I use the filter tool. I use stamp tool in combination with two filter layers to get that look there, and then I remove the shadows on each additional layer moving up so that I have a full scale of shadows, midtones, and highlights. Next, as you can see here, I'm doing the same exact thing with the prairie or the grassy landscape, and I go in and I select a lighter color of green to put as the midtones. The darkest tone of green is going to be the shadows, and then that white are the spectral highlights. As you can see here, I'm doing it again, except as you can see, some of that water brought in to the blue with some of the grass that's in front of the water. So I have to redo that and re-isolate that water before I can go back in and do it. Which again, as I said earlier, is another one of those tedious tasks, but it's nothing difficult. You just have to go in and take your time kind of doing it, sketching it out. As you can see here, some of that black got left over, so I go in with the eraser tool and I fix it up before I can add that effect that I did to the rest of the landscape. And those are the shadows there, and these are the midtones, and then right there are the spectral highlights. And then I remove the black on all three all three. I removed the black on the top two except for the bottom one because the bottom layer is going to need that black. There was some kind of leftover feedback from those other two layers on top of some of the white that was on top, so I go back through and I clean that up a bit. Now that I see what the landscape's going to look like, I can kind of reposition this coyote to be a little bit more of the landscape that I want it to be. And I hide the spectral highlights for now. Until later on where I can bring them back up to kind of make it easier to section out everything. Now I'm doing that same exact thing that I did on the other two layers with this coyote. And those are the colors I chose there. Kind of like a pale brown, a deep brown, the black, and then obviously the white for the highlights in the tail and the arms. Now you can see it's starting to come together. We have kind of like a rough layout of what everything's gonna look like. Obviously, we're gonna add some more stuff to kind of make sure this is like an impactful design. This design too is supposed to be reflective of the Midwest. So as you can see here, I'm using only prairie animals, and I did my research so that I know exactly what animals you'd see there. So that's a certain coyote that you'd only find in that area. Same thing with the turkey buzzards here. Turkey vultures, turkey buzzards. Some people call them all different things. So I'm creating a scene here of the coyote kind of traversing and then the turkey buzzards flying, so you can start to think about what maybe they'd be doing in actual, the actual environment. Maybe these turkey buzzards are circling the coyote, or maybe they're all searching for food in the area. Usually turkey buzzards, when you see, they fly in the sky and they circle a dead carcass or something that they're going to all attack and eat. So they could be circling the coyote here, or all three animals could be searching for the same thing. As you can see there, I tried to quickly add a bluegill. I figured it would have been a little bit too much to kind of add into the water, so I got rid of that idea. Now I'm adding some rocks and this post here to look like maybe there used to be like a man-made path. Maybe some kind of wanderer came through and placed those things to mark his area. And that's again another thing, just to kind of break up that landscape. A lot of times you'll see designs where it's straight up is what it is and there's no suggestions to other things. So for this design, I wanted it to be a lot to look at, a lot to interpret. I really wanted it to look real, because there's always imperfections in real life. So now I'm doing the same thing with these kind of like crabgrass, so that I can put it in front of the coyote there. And that's what I was mentioning earlier. Now that I used that specific coyote, putting that grass in front of him makes him really look like he's in that 3D space, and that there's grass covering his legs, and like I said earlier, imperfections to make everything look like they're really tied in. Same thing with the rocks here. I do the same exact thing, except I don't include the highlights. I just do the gray. I play with it for a little bit until it looks perfect. Now it's time to do these turkey vultures. And the turkey vultures, I'm not purely set on the location of them yet, but I do use that same effect that I've done on everything else. But you can't forget turkey buzzards, turkey vultures, they always have red faces. So you have to go in on the spectral highlight layer and the mid-tone layer and recolor it so that it matches it. And there was a little bit of extra feedback there, so I kind of got rid of those pixels so that it looks perfect. Now you'll see once you zoom out, it really starts to come together. Same thing for the second one here. Now it's time to fade out the sky. I find that this is the most tedious, sometimes the most difficult part of designing as well. One of those things where you just really, I didn't want the sky or how saturated the sky was to get messed up in the fade. So I go through many different fades, many different masks, until it's exactly perfect and matches the halftones that I did for the other layers. Now it's time to bring in the branding, and I pre-made this branding. It was from some past things that were supplied by the client. I opened a new file there, and I bring in some of my blanks here so that I can start to mock up this design and kind of really see the shape that I created. I make the mock-up white, I bring it in there, and what I did there was I removed the white. A better tactic is to just use later styles until it removes the white so that it looks perfectly faded. And this is a rough mock-up. I wouldn't do this normally if I were going to export this mock-up and really post it on social media or something like that. This is just kind of to see roughly what the design looks like so far, considering I still have work to do on the design. So I think it's looking pretty good so far. It's not quite as vibrant as I would want it to be. So once I put down the branding here and the details under human, as you can see here, the collection is going to be called the Corn-Fed Collection, something that the client came up with as well. And the location of this brand is Des Moines, Iowa, which is where all the scenery is from. It's a prairie, so as I mentioned earlier. For some reason here, as I put in this text, it was italicized, even though the italics weren't enabled. So I turn off the italics, and then I go in and I just manually skew it after I kind of bring the kerning in, bring those quotes in, make everything real nice and tight in there. And that looks pretty good. I kind of wanted the design to be a backing to what you'd see as a regular breast print. You know, like t-shirts that just have a design right above the corner breast with but in this design a little bit different with the backing, which is like a faded out, you know, landscape with animals and environment, a habitat. As you can see there, I'm tweaking the colors just a little bit to make them more vibrant, make them look like it's really, you know, the prairie. As you can see here, I'm going through with some plastisol textures to make the design look cracked. I ended up kind of removing them just because I didn't feel like it fit as much. And there we go, guys. This is the final design here. This is how everything came out. As you can see, I kind of went back through and made some changes as well to the locations of the birds and the location of those other elements towards the bottom to kind of make it so that instead of it all being in one frame, some of these elements pop out of the frame, and then the frame only applied to the background, the sky, the landscape, the water. The water kind of got covered up a lot, but you could still see that it's there. And then I went back through, like I said, with those plastisol textures, and I fixed them so that they looked like they applied a little bit more. Sometimes when you use a lighter garment versus a darker garment, you have to change what textures you're using. But this is how it came out. If you guys like how it came out, of course, shoot human clothing a follow, and stay tuned for more.